Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you. Rabbi David Englander of Congregation Bethel is going to start the service of memory, the service of honor today as this grieving family comes together to honor the life of someone so very precious to them and so very precious to so many others as well. There's a psalm that accompanies Jewish funeral liturgy. Number of them actually. This one, Psalm 15, I think it was chosen in part because in listening to the description of the psalmist of what it means to live a good life, we're reminded of the good acts and commitments lived out in the life of those who we have come to memorialize, those who we have gathered together to honor and also to say an earthly goodbye. This is a hard day. Don't need me to tell you that. These are hard moments. Yet everything about this service that takes place here and at the cemetery really is about this one single word of kavod and honor. And by extension, it's also about being of whatever comfort a community can be to a family that today starts a process of grieving that unfolds only over time and with also love. Mizmor David, Adonai Yagorbo Alecha Mishkan Barakashecha, Olech Tamim Ufod Tzedek V'Dover Emet Bilvavo Lo Raga Al Lishono Lo Asalrei Ra'a Mecherpa Lo Nasa Provo Nivzeh Be'inav Nimas Ve'irad Necha Be'nishbal Harav Lo Yamir Kaspo Lo Natan V'Neshech V'Shochad Al Nakilo Lakach Ose Ele Lo Yimo Be'olam, Son of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Practice all your business fairly. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. The other psalm, even more closely associated with a Jewish funeral, is Psalm 23, and our Chazan, Lisa Palmer Borough, chants now Psalm 23.
Mizmor David, Adonai Rohi Lo Echsa, Binot Sheyar B'Tzeini, Al Mei Menuchot Yenaleini, Nafshi Eshover, Yalecheni v'maglei tzedek, Leman Shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, hema yinachamuni. Taroch levanai shulchan, neged tzarera, lishanta b'shem roshi, kasi raya. Achtov v'chesed yirtefuni, kayem echayai, v'shavti b'beit Adonai, l'orech yamim.
Our Chazan just shared with us the familiar words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters. God guides me on paths of righteousness, reviving my soul for the sake of God's glory. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. Good people, it is with heavy hearts that we come together to pay tribute to Ann Singer, taken from our midst far too soon. We've heard readings from the book of Psalms, and I am recently stepped away from the role of the senior rabbi position at Bethel, and Rabbi Englander, who began our service, is my successor. We did not consult prior to the service here today, but the psalm that he chose is the same one I chose for your mom. So let me read this little part of it again to you. Psalm 15 opens, O Lord, who shall dwell eternally in your holy sanctuary? Who shall abide forever upon your holy mountain? she who lives with integrity, does what is right, and speaks the truth that is in her heart. Boom. That's the song for Anne. She was a woman of integrity, guided by the principles of morality, propriety, and compassionate humanity. She indeed spoke the truth that was in her heart. She was, as you said, and you may once again, unapologetically true to herself all the time. Anne looked for the good in people. She was a fierce advocate for that which was just and right. She was universally respected in the professional world and, moreover, deeply loved by the family and friends who felt honored to have been able to share her world. So today we gather to pay tribute to her memory and to learn from her example. From Anne we can learn how to live a good life in service of others and yet always remain true to yourself. Anne's parents, your parents, Paul, Margaret and Simon, met at Cornell Law School. And the two of you were raised in White Plains by devoted parents who valued both learning and wisdom. As I hear it, your father was a man of strong opinions himself, while your mother, the quieter of the two, but in every way just as intellectually gifted. And they made a lovely home for you, Paul, and your sister Anne. Your sister was a tomboy from childhood. Your parents took her to ride horses, and that became a passion of Anne's. And it sounds like you had a lot of fun together growing up, and I do know how close you remained throughout the years, even though miles separated you. You were always close together at heart. And I also know how much Anne enjoyed her time with you, Miriam, and with your children, with Will and Carrie. And I hope that the memories of all that you have shared over the years are a source of comfort to you and to your loved ones. Paul, your parents instilled in you and in your sister Anne a love of learning, and your sister and you both followed through. Anne went to the University of Chicago. Later she got a master's degree in biology, and she thought about going to medical school, but of course ultimately she decided on a career in law, and for the many people she helped over the years as an attorney, it was a good thing that she did. She always found the humanity in her clients and advocated for them strongly. She took her cases personally. She always stood up in the face of injustice, and she was the one that other lawyers could turn to for advice and guidance, as we'll hear from in just a bit. In time, Anne was, of course, blessed with two loving daughters, Laurel, Karen, the two of you. And you'll speak soon about your mom the way only two daughters can. But I know how grateful you were to have your mom as your role model. Your mother gave you the latitude to find out things on your own, to be strong and independent. And like her father, your mother was a woman of strong opinions, and she was not afraid to share them. But one thing was obvious to both of you. She only wanted what was best for both of you. She had a plan, a vision, an idea of who you should be, and you never disappointed her. She loved you so much, and you knew that she always had your back. She was so proud of you, and moreover, she was very proud of the lives that you made for yourselves. 20 years ago, David, I had the honor of standing under the chuppah with you, under the wedding canopy with you and your beloved Anne as I officiated at your wedding. And I know it meant so much to both of you to be married at our synagogue at Bethel, because that's where the two of you met, at a Bethel's singles event. And for anybody who knows Anne well, this is a bit of a surprise because it was a Super Bowl watching party. As David said yesterday, they met under false pretenses. because Ed was neither religious nor a football fan. So there had to be something more going on. And like I said, Ed knew what she liked, and she knew what she wanted. And when she saw you, David, she knew she had found the one. So I went back and I looked at my notes from when I met with the two of you in my office in the old synagogue building, and the conversations we had prior to your wedding. And Anne told me on that day that she knew right away. She said that you just thought it was happenstance, that you just happened to start a conversation with this beautiful, vivacious woman. But really, she was scoping you out the whole time. She asked a friend who you were. You were already in conversation, so she took a moment or two to size you up, and then, in her own words, gave you a little mini interview. I guess you passed the test because she said she was touched by how very well spoken you are, how sensitive, caring, and kind. She was impressed by your openness from the very outset. And Anne was persistent. She was in love with you, and you opened your heart to love her as well. As you told me then, you loved Anne's youthfulness. You admired her integrity as well as her empathy. And of course, it helped that you shared the same politics. The last thing you said to me before our time was together in that, to end at that initial interview, you said, "Now the world is our oyster." And indeed it has been. The two of you had a wonderful marriage. You two drank deeply from the cup of life. You traveled the world arm in arm. There aren't many parts of the world you haven't seen together. You journeyed far and wide, and the art collection in your home reflects that. And your children, Sarah and Josh, they knew from the outset that their dad had found somebody very special. They could see the way that you completed one another, and it made them feel so good inside, as it did for your brother Morris and your sister-in-law Rona, from whom we'll hear in a moment. And so it was that your children became her children, and her daughters became yours as well. The love that the four of you share for Anne, for David, is palpable. And it is that love that will continue to sustain and support him as you support one another in these challenging times. And in time, David, you and Anne were blessed to see the family grow as Jamie and Alex and John and Chris each found a special place in both of your hearts. And the four of them came to love and respect Anne. Also, she was forthright, and the house might have been a little louder than some of the ones that they were used to, but they always knew how much she loved each of them and how grateful she was for the happiness that you have brought into her children's lives. And over time, she had the joy of being a grandmother, although I never liked the term. She was an Anma, and she loved watching Jack and Gemma and Avery and Jacob grow. She loved it when the kids were a little older, when she could read to them and carry on an intelligent conversation, one that they could understand. And even though she can't have a conversation with little Zachary, he will know all about her because all you have shared. Anne Singer was so very blessed in so many ways. She had a meaningful career where she knew she was really making a difference in people's lives. She knew how much they were appreciated, how much her work was appreciated. People kept in touch with her years later to thank her for the good work that she did on their behalf. She was well respected by her peers and her colleagues. Nothing gave her greater joy than throwing herself wholly into her work. Anne was also blessed with a wide circle of friends. She was so warm and outgoing, and she made friends easily, but she also had a knack for keeping friends, for keeping in touch. And she put the effort in to make sure that those friendships remained strong. She was happy because she was married to the man of her dreams and had a fantastic life with you, David. For most of her life, Anne was also blessed with good health. She never felt like she was getting old. In fact, conversations about doctor's appointments and medications that people are taking bored her to tears. She would much rather have talked about the most important issues of the day. But of course, this past year, her good health came to an end, and she was challenged with a disease that has no cure. She gave it her best shot. She refused to be weakened or diminished so long as she could keep up the fight, and she was a fighter. She never wanted to give in. She never wanted to say goodbye. And through it all, David, you were right by her side. You took care of her. You cheered her on. You took care of her every need. And you demonstrated to your children the meaning of true love. And your kids were there to support you both as you met this challenge together. And if love alone could cure illness, then Anne Singer would have lived forever. But ultimately it was too much, and so Anne parted this world the way that she lived in it, surrounded by people who loved her. And it is indeed that love that will continue to sustain you in the challenging days ahead. Her physical presence is no more, but her loving spirit, that lives on through all of you. So live fully and love deeply, and you will forever be blessed by the enduring spirit of this incredible woman. So we pray, Tehei Nishmata, Tzur B'Tzur Chaim, that the soul of Chana Bat Shlomo, the soul of our beloved Anne Singer, be bound in the bond of eternal life, and her memory be a blessing in our hearts and in our homes forever. Amen. I'm going to have the honor of hearing from family members and friends here today. And Laura, I'll start with you.
I need reading glasses and I refuse to get them yet. Full of life. Universally, this is how people describe my mom. And so, it seems especially cruel that she received the crushing diagnosis almost exactly a year ago today. ALS is unfair, and it was unfair to see her struggle. It was unfair to see her uncomfortable. It was unfair to see her not in control. Because if she was one thing other than being full of life, my mom was in control. From the moment she entered the room, my mom was in control. Like when she'd come visit and walk through my front door and immediately tell me that my area rug needed to be centered, or that my pictures were hung just too high, sometimes even before she said hello. She did it too, even when she left the room, by leaving a list for David to accomplish during the day while she was at work, for example. She didn't do it in a mean way. She did it in a critically loving way, a way to make sure that everything was just right. Well, if the worst that she could come up with was making sure because she could see eye to eye with my wall hangings, I'll take it. As you all know, my mom was a lawyer, but she was more than that. She was a champion for justice, and she truly saw the good in people. I'll never forget that at a young age, I think I was around 13 or 14 years old, she brought a woman named Karen, not my sister Karen, another woman named Karen, one of her clients, home for dinner. The woman, who had just been released from prison, had one of her first post-prison meals with us. It was my mom, her client Karen, my sister Karen, and me at the dining room table. And my mom wanted to provide her with a good home-cooked meal. And as we sat down to eat, the client said, "Oh wow, real silverware." She'd been convicted of stabbing someone, so you see the irony. But my mom saw her as just a misunderstood person who deserved a second chance. And so, while maybe my sister and I were a little more concerned about this situation than my mom at the time, we learned to give the same consideration to other underprivileged, less fortunate people. And thus she instilled in my sister and me the importance of education and public service. She fought for clients who had been wronged both in the criminal and civil realms. During her years as a public advocate, a U.S. attorney, and finally a private attorney, she was always fighting the good fight, always pursuing justice. And so she was one of the few people outside of my own work as a public defender that I could regale with stories of my own clients, and she would truly sympathize with me as I would tell her how my client was wrongfully held on a high bail or had received a sentence that was unjust. She celebrated my not guilties, my sentencing wins, my motions, and my professional goal to be on the murder list, a list of attorneys who are appointed to defend indigent people charged with murder. Most people would say, "You want to be on a murder list?" But to her, of course, it made sense. She also loved to travel. She started traveling at a relatively young age, and she traveled often, and ultimately with her best travel companion, David. I started learning from her at the youngest possible time, when I was in utero, unbeknownst to her, on her trip to Kenya. She loved to see new places, learn about different cultures, get some rest, and during some trips, spend time with family and friends. We were lucky enough to enjoy beautiful vacations to Switzerland, Colorado, the Caribbean, and the Outer Banks as a family. She relished the time away and time relaxing, in her own Ann Singer way, of relaxing. On our first international trip to Mexico after I was born, she started teaching us not only about culture and history and beauty, like the beaches and snorkeling and the Aztec ruins, but also the valuable lessons of bargaining and the value of a good sale. She took us to bargain at the market in Cancun to get a good deal. What probably turned out to just be a few pesos difference, but she had so much fun negotiating with the townspeople. And on these trips, she would sneak a few extra pieces of fruit from the hotel into her bags for the day of touring. And she also taught us the advantages of the hotel's toiletries. Stock up. And now we too have those same hotel shampoos and soaps in our bathrooms where guests visit. Of course, she taught us about sales and coupons. Oh, the coupons. From the grocery store, the restaurants, and the retail stores. One day, we were visiting her from Massachusetts, and she wanted to take me clothes shopping, something we enjoyed about once a year together. And we were trying to plan when we would go during our visit. And she said that it had to be that day because she had all these beautiful coupons that were about to expire. And so I didn't say no, of course. Again, you don't say no to Ann Singer. She was very persistent, but I already knew the value of a good deal and some good retail therapy. These are all valuable life lessons that we are already passing on to our kids and our partners. One thing my mom was always doing was rushing around, whether it was just to run out one more time to get something at the grocery store or just to get out of the house. It was really hard to make her just sit still. And in this, I saw her as getting as much done as quickly as she could, often causing her to be late to appointments or getting home later than she said she would. She certainly crammed in so much, and for that, I'm grateful. She knew life was short, and she had no regrets. She made sure she lived her life to the absolute fullest. But my mom had so much more to give, so much more to live for. Some people think 77 years old is old, but she was not old at all, not in mind or in body. When I was pregnant with my first son, her first grandchild, she didn't want to be called grandma because being a grandma made her old, and so she became Amma, classic Ann Singer. She grew into being a grandmother, even if she didn't truly admit that's what she was. That was how she behaved and treated her grandchildren. She loved playing games with them, hearing about their school days and accomplishments, new activities, and yes, taking them to Barnes & Noble to buy lots and lots of books. She even finally thought babies were cute. Well, some babies. As my sister-in-law says, I love me some Ann Singer. Clearly we all feel that way. It's a testament to what an incredible person she was and how many people she touched, that at 77 she has a room full of people here for her. Family, friends, colleagues. And she didn't just have friends. Every time I asked of her who a person was I may not have heard of or realized who it was, she would end the sentence with, he or she has become a close friend. Close friends to her or family. There's so much more I could say, maybe about how direct she was, or her amazing editing skills, or how she liked to go to the theater. But I can only hope that I can accomplish a fraction of what she did during her life, in law, in travel, as a parent, and as a person. As I wrap up the hardest closing statement of my life, and as you move into tonight, tomorrow, and beyond, through your own lives, I ask you to think of her when you travel, when you enjoy a good meal or a glass of wine, or you have a political discussion. Or you hear about someone being executed or sentenced to death. She cringed when she would hear those news stories. Think about her when you learn, or when you or others become educated and pursue justice. Think of her and raise a glass of wine when you see Trump indicted, and again when you see him convicted. And I say when, not if, because it will happen. That's what she wanted, and she almost always got what she wanted. And of course, think about her when you ask what's for dinner.
That was really beautiful, and I think you're going to see some common themes here. So, preparing my remarks for today took a long time, and yet I also did it just last night, because for one, it's really hard to believe that she's actually gone. Even with a years-long diagnosis, it just doesn't feel quite real yet, because as my sister noted, she had such a presence. It just doesn't quite seem real. And second, because how can you wrap up what someone means to you, especially someone who you've known your whole life and was in fact a parent, in a 5-minute speech? And the answer is, of course you can't, but you'll do the best. I'll do the best that I can. So what I did was I thought of some adjectives to describe my mother, and of course it won't do it her justice, but it will give a little bit of flavor to the edges that maybe you know. So we'll start with the adjectives. And again, these might sound familiar already. Adventurous, brilliant, compassionate, self-assured, resolute, community builder, and brave. And I'm going to go through each one. I won't spend too long with a story or with some anecdote. So adventurous. We all know how much my mom loved to travel. We've heard and we've seen the pictures outside, and many of us have been with her on those travels. But she wasn't just a traveler. She was actually quite adventurous on her travels. She began to ski when she was 42 years old, which now, at 43, doesn't seem that big of a deal, but it's actually quite a thing to say, I want to pick up a new sport and something that could be as dangerous as skiing. She loved riding horses. She grew up riding horses. She had me and my sister ride horses when we grew up, and one of her favorite things to do was to go on vacations and go for 4, 5, 6 hour horseback rides and say, let's just go out to the field and go faster, faster, faster. She always just wanted to feel that wind in her hair and go. Brilliant. I mean, honestly, I've learned so many things about my mother, even just in this past week. It's not just all the professional accolades, but I didn't really know about her law writing until this past year when she started sharing some of it with me. And it's funny because if you knew her, she isn't someone who, you know, who I would lovingly call a little bit unfiltered in some ways, but you know what I mean, right? But if you read her writing, it was actually crystal clear, focused, and persuasive. And in retrospect, so were many of her arguments. In fact, her political arguments and around the dinner table, and it seemed like such a contradiction in some ways, but yet in retrospect, she was actually very crystal clear, and she knew how to persuade people and how to be very, very clear on where she stood. Compassionate. Again, she always saw the humanity in people, in her clients, people she met, people who she surrounded herself with, just everything. Laurel mentioned the client she brought home for dinner, for example, and she understood that while people were responsible for their own actions, there were circumstances that were outside of their control that may have led them to do the things they did or land where they did. Practical. Oh, I didn't say practical up top, I forgot to add it, but practical. My mother was incredibly practical about things. Laurel mentioned that she rushed everywhere, so it will come as no surprise that we were present as children when she was pulled over for speeding tickets several times. She taught us, not by telling us, but by action, how to get out of speeding tickets. A skill that has come in handy from time to time. She also had tips for me on dating, which I think a lot of you know. In my late 30s, I was still dating, and she said, Karen, you need to make it like a second job. Just go out for 5-minute coffee dates and do several in the same night. There's no need to spend too much time, because when you know, just move on. And I did use that advice. Self-assured. She was actually incredibly self-assured, as I know you all know. She was entrepreneurial. As a child, she actually raised and bred gerbils. It may be hamsters, I'm not sure. Some sort of rodent. I think in junior high school, maybe high school, and she sold them, and apparently the cages kept piling up. As quickly as she could get them out, she would have more. She actually also, after working for 4 years in mental health in New Jersey, she wrote a book on mental health in the state of New Jersey, which is pretty gutsy. I mean, it's not something that I would think to do, but why not? She had something to say, and she wanted to say it, so why not write a book on the topic? And it's incredible. She was a community builder, and by that I mean she was a good friend, and I've learned in my life that meeting, building, and maintaining close friendships is actually a lot of work, and something you have to dedicate yourself to, and my mother was a pro at it. She, just look around at all the people who are here, and all the people that filled her life with all the joy. It's all of you. As Laurel said, your family, and it was because she cared about you and she loved you and she worked at it because it was important to her. It took commitment and drive, and it was a part of who she was. Resolute. I think we all know about my mom's political opinions. Once she decided on something in general, though, that was what she got, and it was kind of over for everybody else. So I'm going to tell in a little bit different light the story about how she met David. I was 17 years old, and we had actually gone skiing for the day. My sister was in college already, and we were on the way back, and she said, we have to be back by 5 o'clock. And I said, what's going on at 5? Well, I have to get ready for this singles dinner. I said, what, a singles dinner? It was Super Bowl Sunday. And she said, yeah, it's at Bethel, it's at the synagogue. And as you have already mentioned, it seemed a little funny to me because she wasn't exactly the most religious, and she definitely did not like organized sports. And so I thought, there's no way she's going to meet somebody at this singles event. But when she came home that night, I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework, and I'll never forget. She walked in the house, and I said, Mom, how did the singles event go? Thinking, there's no way. And she said, I met this man. And then she just went on for about half an hour about all the things about David. He's tall and has a big beard and is smart and is so thoughtful. And I hope he calls me, I hope he calls. I've had his card. I made him give me his card. In case he doesn't call, I'm going to wait 2 weeks, but I know I'm going to wait 1 week. But in case, I'll wait 2 weeks. He better call. And I knew in that moment, you didn't really have a choice, David. And he did call. I want to take a moment here before going to the last adjective and just say to David, you were the love of her life. And when I think of a life partner, I can't think of anybody better than you. And I just want to really express my gratitude for the 25 years that you've been with her and for how you took care of her that whole time in this past year. Because I know it wasn't easy. And truly, she couldn't have ever had anybody better in her life as a partner. So thank you. And that brings me to my last adjective, which is brave. She was diagnosed a year ago, almost to the day, with ALS. It was September 27th, 2021. It's a crushing disease. And we all watched as her physical body slowly gave out while her mind stayed 100% intact. It's cruel. She brought it bravely and on her own terms, as she did everything in her life. And I had the chance in this past year to spend a little more time with her, or I took the time, maybe I should say. And I asked her last week or the week before if she had any regrets or anything she would do differently, and she said, no, I had a perfect life. And I would say, should we all be so lucky? But really, luck maybe had something to do with it. But what I would say is, should we all be so intentional with our time? And that's something that I'll try to be moving forward. That's what I was saying.
Thank you, Karen, Laura. We're going to now call on dear friend Stephanie Fine.
So I asked Gloria to be up here with me, but she really represents all of the sisters who are in the room, who are sisters to Anne in so many different ways, and all of the close friends who have been so close to Anne for so many years. So I'm just going to give a very short memoir about our time with Anne, and you'll see the same themes that have been spoken by others. So we meet, let me start again. So chapter 1, sisterhood. We meet in a divorce support group. Anne is strong, intelligent, and affable. So are Gloria and I. A sisterhood forms and lasts 35 years. We laugh and cry, celebrating the joyful and the stressful. Chapter 2, kissing frogs while awaiting princes. Together we enter, with trepidation, the world of middle-aged dating. Anne is diligent. With determination, she places and replies to personal ads, hires a dating service, goes to bars, and to organize single events. Gloria and I quickly toss the frogs, but Anne doesn't let people go easily. So we watch her boyfriend named Court take over her bustling Thanksgiving Day kitchen, laying out dish towels on every surface, and washing and drying individually leaves of lettuce as we're trying to prepare a huge Thanksgiving dinner. Next, we shake our heads as Anne dates a minister. Then we laugh as Anne stays fit while trying to keep up with Treadmill Man and spends 45 to an hour, minutes to an hour on a treadmill. The woman who really never wanted to get on that treadmill. And with babies were followed by too many unsuitable men to mention. However, chapter 3, he's so cute. But wait, Anne, the avowed atheist and football hater, as others have said, agrees to attend the Super Bowl party at Bethel. She comes home gushing about David and telling us he's so cute. And she would rub David on the head while she would do that later on. David is the man of her dreams, and Anne is persistent. Finally, David moves in and eventually agrees to marriage. We continue to hear throughout the years, he's so cute. And we know that pursuing David was one of Anne's wisest decisions. Chapter 4, let the good times roll. Anne and her family become our nearby family. Together we celebrate holidays and special occasions and ski vacations. Anne likes to cook and often prepares my husband's favorite dessert, blueberry pie. Anne loves to travel. We plan extensive trips and visit parts of Africa, Asia, and Europe. And I can tell you there's no one else who is as organized and able to plan a trip with as Anne and me. Anne loves movies and theaters and dinners out. We have lively discussions, and Anne cogently argues her points of view. We stay up late watching election results. One year, Trump is elected. Anne's passionate feelings about the future of our country are illustrated by her comment that she regrets not living long enough to see Trump indicted. Chapter 5, the goodbye. And so the time is here for me to say goodbye to someone who fiercely did so much good for so many disadvantaged people. I feel like I have lost a brave sister, and I'm blessed to have had her in my life as a close friend for so many years. I cherish the memories of a brilliant and passionate woman who so enriched our lives.
Thank you, Stephanie and Gloria. We're now going to call on sister-in-law Rona Berengut.
I'm David's brother's wife, and we're here from Toronto. I've known Anne for 20-something years. You're married for 20, 25 years or so. I did not know her in her professional capacity, and I'm actually sorry about that, given her accomplishments. But I know her to visit with, because I'm her sister-in-law. And I got to tell you, I think Anne's visiting and hostessing skills were as good, if not better, than her professional accomplishments. We were saying earlier, that woman knew how to throw a party. Our first meeting actually was at a birthday party for David in a Moroccan restaurant. I don't know who planned it, but it came off wonderfully. But we're coming from Toronto. We're going to Wilmington. Anne's coming from Cherry Hill and going to Wilmington. This is where the party is. Now, never met Anne. And David had had a series of courts and whomevers. Okay, so, you know, through the bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah years, there's always David with another face. Oh, what's that one? So he's got a girlfriend. Okay. After the party, we go back and we start opening gifts. We go from Toronto to Wilmington, and we're told by Sarah to drive up to South Philly. There's a place to get a present. No idea what to get David. We open the presents, and first Anne's present gets opened. And she bought him a wood, nick that thing, okay? A jewelry box. We bought him the exact same thing. Then he opens cards. Sarah and Josh got the same identical card to Anne. Well, that was scary. I will always see Anne with a huge smile on her face, delighted whenever we visited. We're always made to feel as though we were the highlight of the day when we arrived. And the same thing was true when she visited us. She was genuinely thrilled to be with us. So she appeared. I like to think so. And Anne was never content just to sit around. Though as an avid reader, she was never at a loss for what to do when she was alone. We would go to movies, to plays, she took us to the theater. And sometimes we had to drive out of town to go to the theater. We went impromptu to the theater. We went to every museum. I tell people, you gotta go to Philadelphia because they have fabulous museums, and then I start to list them. I've even done a comparison between the Rodin Museum in Paris and the one in Philadelphia. Because with Anne, you had to go to the museums. Anne's love of reading was something she shared often with my mother of blessed memory. The two of them could hold their own book club, much to my chagrin because I didn't like my mother's taste in books. But Anne and my mother were always reading the same books, and Anne always had several books, and they would just sit and talk and have a great review. Anne developed a really good relationship with my mother and was truly saddened when we lost my mother to cancer. Even in her solitary pursuit of reading, Anne was making friends. And age didn't matter. My mother, well. To be Anne's sister-in-law is to know how absolutely gobsmacked crazy in love she was with David. Oh yeah, I love that. Okay. So uncharacteristic of her usual reserved demeanor, she would hug and kiss him and cuddle him like a high school teenager. She loved you, David. She lit up when he came in a room. And when she and I talked in July about her illness, it was her concern for David that she focused on. Anne was my sister-in-law. She brought joy to David's life, and she certainly made a wonderful contribution to my life. She was my friend and sometimes confidant. And I am so furious at whatever or whoever decided that a brilliant, vibrant person should have such a terrible disease. I am furious that I don't get to spend more visits and more time with her. Anne, you're my sister-in-law, my friend, and I will miss you.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. We're going to now call on good friend and former colleague Edmund Axelrod.
So, after all of these truly eloquent words from so many of you, I feel that there's very little left to say, but I will say just a little. Anne was my close friend for more than 42 years. We first met as young lawyers in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and in a very short time, we were sharing not only our love of the law and our commitment to justice, but also our personal lives. We raised our children in tandem, her two daughters, Laurel and Karen, and my two boys, Daniel and Jeremy. And she was so much a part of our lives that my younger son was actually shocked and quite disappointed when he learned that Anne was not his actual aunt. That was one of Anne's many gifts. When she entered your life, it was without reservation, and you reaped the rewards of her humor, her joy, her incisive intelligence, and her loyalty. If you were Anne's family, her friend, her colleague, or her client, you always had someone in your corner, someone who would care for you and fight for you, and your life would be better because she was in it. If you're sitting here, if you knew Anne, you don't need me to tell you that Anne was someone who not only knew her own mind, but also someone who never shied away from sharing her feelings and her convictions with you and the world. The term force of nature is overused, but it truly applied to Anne. Today we did hear this, you often hear that spouses and partners share a life with someone who was the love of their life. And as Karen said, David truly was the love of Anne's life. But for me, and for I think many of you, it is this: Anne, you were the friend of a lifetime.
Thank you, Edna. And finally, we're going to call on good friend and fellow editorial board member John Connell.
Good afternoon. It is really very, very good to be together with all of you here today to celebrate and honor the life of Anne Singer. My name is John Connell. I'm an attorney with Archer and Greiner, and I'm a member of the New Jersey Law Journal Editorial Board. But first and foremost, I'm a friend of Anne, and I'm a friend of David. I actually met Anne many years ago when she was co-counsel to one of my law partners. But our relationship was forged when I joined the New Jersey Law Journal Editorial Board, where we had so many robust conversations about law and politics. Thankfully, I was on her side. I tremble to think if I was not. That relationship then evolved into a friendship, I'd like to say a close friendship, as Anne would say, among David and myself and my wife, Colleen. We shared many, many visits together, meals together, where we broke bread, continued our discussion, robust discussion of politics, and told stories about our travels. Anne and David are dear, dear friends of ours. Those meals and visits continued even beyond the onset of COVID, and thankfully so, because it was just such a source of joy to break through the isolation that COVID imposed on all of us. And David and Anne certainly were a source of joy for us. Once Anne was diagnosed with ALS, the visits and meals continued. And of course, the conversations became deeper and more personal. Upon the passing of Anne, there was an outpouring of sympathy and grief on the part of the members of the editorial board. I think that sentiment was summed up best by the chair of the board, Rosemary Alito, who said the following: Anne has been a bright light on this board for so many years, a frequent and insightful contributor with a powerful voice for ethics and justice in law and society. I lack the words to express how much Anne has meant to our editorial board family and how much she will be missed. Anne's bravery and dignity at this difficult time reflect a beautiful soul and the peace that comes with a life well lived. Anne, you are in all of our thoughts and prayers. On a more personal note, my wife, Colleen, who had a younger sister who also suffered with ALS and passed at the age of 49, leaving 3 young children. My wife wrote the following: Anne, I am in awe of how you have lived your life with passion and intellectual curiosity, always engaging with a smile and a follow-up question. On this celebration of Rosh Hashanah, I wish you peace in knowing that you have lived your best life, love to carry you on this next journey, and joy in knowing the exquisite gift you are to your loved ones. May your true spirit now break free through the body that has served you so well, just like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Peace to you, Anne. I will miss you intensely, but I know that you will be a powerful force for good in the universe. I love you. And finally, I added, Anne, first, I love you. I respect you, and I hold you dear. You are a great blessing to me. I have relished our many times together, as well as our shared dinners over these many, many months. You are a living grace, and David exceeds the standards of integrity and honor of a mensch. And you are a truly remarkable gift to our world and our humanity. I cannot thank you enough for your friendship, your love, and your support. You have been an extraordinary personal inspiration to me, both professionally and personally. But I also know that our relationship will exceed the dimensions of time and space. I am profoundly grateful to you with my sincere and enduring love. I'll leave you with the last words that I expressed to Anne. Anne, I'll see you later.
Thank you all for sharing so deeply of your hearts. We'll have the opportunity to continue to share memories and offer condolences and show support for this beautiful family. Immediately following our service, interment will take place at Locust Wood Cemetery. Family returning to David and Anne's home, 435 St. John's Drive in Cherry Hill. There'll be a Shiva service there tonight at 7 o'clock and another on Sunday night at 7 as well. So please rise now for the memorial prayers.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochen B'Meromim, Hametzei Melecha Nechona, Tachak Alefei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim HaTehorim, 'Cause all, 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 'cause
I
אז תראה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותיצרו בתוך חיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום המשכבה, ונאמר אמן.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Chana Bat Shlomo, Ann Singer, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You can be seated for a few moments.
Will the pallbearers please step to the center aisle? And I'll ask if we can rise once more, please. Folks,